Hello, welcome to Board Game Madness. I'm Mike Ganade, and we are here in the second round of the tournament. So we have our winners from the first round, and this is our first video in the second round. So we are now getting into some of my favorite games of my collection. Not that we were starting off with any bad games to begin with, but as we move through each round, we're going to get closer and closer to my favorite game, the game I think is the most prized possession of my personal collection. So keep that in mind. Before we start about each game, since we are in the second round now, I will say that I'll be skipping over the game overviews of what each game is about, since if you want to know what those games are about, you can watch the game's previous matchup when it won and get a little background of what the game's about. I'm going to try to mix it up a little bit in this round, so while we're looking at each category, and each category will be the same, we're going to change some of the things I may talk about so that I'm not treading on the same points over and over again. I'm going to do my best to tread on new aspects of each game as we go into the second round. So with that, let's get started. In our first matchup of the second round, we have the number 1 seed, Everdell, versus the number 17th seed, Tapestry. So again, if you want to get an overview of what these games are about, go back and watch their previous matchups in round 1, see how they were triumphant against the other games of my collection. We're going to try to keep these round 2 videos a little quicker. We'll see how I do, but we're going to start with production. And for production in this round, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to talk about my single favorite component from each of these games. So my favorite components, or components I guess, so my sort of category of components. My favorite components in Tapestry are by far the buildings that you place, the little building sculptures that are pre-painted that you place in your town. Everdell, my single favorite tactile component is probably the glitter gold coins that are your points in the game. But beyond that tactile feel, my favorite single thing in Everdell is just the card art in general. But Everdell is up against a Stonemaier game. And I think even looking at those components, we're talking about cards and card art, which I think falls a little bit more into theme than production. Whereas Tapestry, the buildings that a lot of the game is shaped around is one of my favorite components. So I think when you're looking at production, I actually think this is, while both of these games have pretty great production, for me personally, it's hard to vote against Tapestry in the production side of things. Just a really strong production. Stonemaier Games always does an excellent job, and I don't think Tapestry is any different. There's not a single component I could think of to complain about in this game. All of my complaints are going to come in the next category, which is game mechanics. So when it comes to game mechanics and playing the game, Everdell is really just a joy to play. But in this category, since we sort of talked about the general things, and obviously I like both games a lot mechanically, I'm going to talk about some of the things that players may not like, or that I'm going to try to focus on sort of the negative stuff for these games, since they're already won the first round, and we're going to sort of try to weigh which negatives are the harder ones to justify to maybe make up the difference. So for Everdell, one of the main complaints I hear about the game is the randomness of the card draw, the deck of cards you're drawing from, and getting certain combos with that card draw. And while there certainly is card draw in this game, I actually think you have a lot of mechanisms to work through that card draw. And the fact that the meadow itself has 8 cards in it and is part of your hand means that combos are more about taking stock of what's in your hand and what combos are out there and protecting those combos than never getting them. For example, there are some cards with extreme frequency when it comes to the farmer and the farm, and the twig barge and the frog or whoever is on that twig barge. Those common critters and common structures are very easy to combo. It's never an issue. It's really only these huge scoring opportunities where there's less matches. And I think personally that complaint doesn't hit home that much for me because those combos are very hard to find and trigger, and you need to defend against them. So, you should have access to them or be focusing on card draw to make sure that combo is available to you if that's the strategy you're going with. And I like that risk reward mechanic personally. So, again, game mechanics, so easy to teach. It really is sort of like an evergreen title as in the industry now. I think it's very well known. It's a really solid game. So Everdell game mechanics are excellent, but those are some of the negatives. So moving over to Tapestry and some of the things I like and dislike about Tapestry, mechanically at least. So first, there's the very public problem with the civilizations being balanced. They've been rebalanced and they're being constantly monitored and rebalanced sort of after the fact. There was even a reprint of some of the core factions with the first expansion, which I have. So I have corrected civilizations, but the asymmetric nature of those civilizations and how each of them works is something that for people, again, this is stuff other people may not like or critical things about the gameplay. For me personally, I love having all those civilizations to choose from, but by having so many civilizations, the balance and asymmetry between them, it may not be even playing amongst different players of different skill level. It's really hard to say if all civs are created equal in this particular game. Other things people may not like or you could be critical of in Tapestry is Tapestry cards, the randomness of what you get and how strong those cards are for you in a given moment is a factor. Again, you can actually choose to draw more Tapestry cards depending on the actions you take. So I actually think that since everyone's on equal footing in that particularly doesn't bother me, but you may luck into the perfect card for your situation that gives you a big point lead. And so again, the balance can be a little bit questionable. The balance type of stuff bothers me a lot less in this game than the fact that I think 2 tracks and the synergy they have together is a really strong dominant strategy. So looking at the last game of Tapestry I played, which was actually pretty recently, I find that the Conquer and Explore actions, when taken together, especially early on, is just very strong. I don't see why you wouldn't do that in the beginning, especially compared to the invention, which is sort of card dependent on what inventions are out there and what points you can have. And then the science die roll is such a luck thing. You can sometimes hit exactly the space you want and get the bonus you want. Other times you can skip past something that's really important to you. And that feels really bad. So that science track is so risky, whereas the other two are just so consistent and strong, especially together, that I think that dominant strategy is problematic. The other thing that was pointed out to me the last time I played Tapestry, which I do think is a weakness, is the actual scoring of your city with the buildings and playing off that strategy of filling out that grid is one of the weaker strategies of the game. So while it's really cool to get all these houses and all these buildings in there, it's really hard to actually exploit that for lots of points. There's actually much bigger scoring opportunities out there when it comes to racing up the track and everything. And I think there are some strategy mismatches in Tapestry in general. So when I'm looking at sort of these weaknesses of these games, I think Tapestry's flaws are a little more problematic. I think what's great about Tapestry is it's really easy to teach and it's really streamlined. You can play with a bunch of different groups of people. But the more you play it and the more you get like hardcore competitive players in Tapestry, the more cracks you see in its balance and the overall strategies. Although, I guess I should say this for next time, although I will say that playing a new civilization and like figuring that out in Tapestry is always an incredibly fun thing. So I do sort of get more out of each play of Tapestry because I'm always playing a new Civ. Whereas Everdell, I mean, the core box, especially, I don't know the last time I played the core game by itself. I do have a lot of the expansions, but I've played the core game so much. I enjoy it a ton, but replayability-wise, you know, I'm not sure it's quite as strong as Tapestry for me currently. But when it comes to game mechanics, I'm definitely going with Everdell. It's really stood the test of time in my collection. It's one of my go-to worker placement games. Even people in my family are a little tired of it because we played it so much. So I think it's a really strong engine builder worker placement. I like the way those two mechanisms work together. And again, the critiques about Everdell have more to do with a generic elemental part of the game, which is you are building cards and building a city of cards, and there is card draw. Whereas Tapestry's flaws, you could have potentially designed and improved upon. In fact, some of the flaws have been improved upon, and I give credit for Jamie Stigmeyer and Stonemeyer Games for sticking with it and keeping track of the balance of the civilizations to try to make the game better and better. I do really appreciate that sort of after-the-fact support. So for game mechanics, I'm going to stick with Everdell, which leads us to theme. And so for me personally, the theme between these two is pretty difficult. I love the art and the world of Everdell. I find very charming, but it doesn't speak to me personally. Like, a bunch of cool forest critters is cute and cool, and I love the art, but there's no like oomph to it for me, or I can't like dig my teeth into it, I guess. It's great, but it's not superb, I guess. Tapestry, the thing I love about Tapestry is the theming of the Tapestry cards you play and the civs you play as. I mean, just look at any of the civs in the game if you have a chance. Go look at the civ setups and how you use these different cubes to set up different things on your player mat, and each civ can feel so drastically different that I just love that experience, and I feel like I'm a different civilization. With that starting mat, I feel like I'm such a different civ based on what their abilities are, and then I try to couple that with the cards, and it just creates a really cool thematic thing for me, personally. I also think that having all the buildings on the map and everything is a very strong theme. I mean, this is really close. I almost don't want to pick a theme. This is so subjective. I mean, with the tree on the table, when you're looking at table presence and just like engrossing you in the theme, both of these games do a great job of doing that. I will say that as far as theme goes, I think Everdell brings you in a little bit more together as a group because you're all playing off the same cards. Tapestry, you have the center map, but so much of what you're doing is like on your player mat. It's a little less connected to everyone else at the table. But I don't know. I'm gonna say I lean towards Tapestry just because the theme is evocative to me, and I think it's sort of like limitless with the type of civilizations you can have. But then again, Everdell has a ton of expansions with a ton of new things around this world as well. So I'm gonna say it's a tie, but for me, I'd lean maybe a little towards Tapestry personally. Okay, this is gonna be a hard pick because now we've got to go into. I'm gonna put these off a little bit. Now we have to go off into replayability. And Everdell's replayability is about searching those cards and going for those different combos. So the box inherently doesn't have a ton of replayability. Each meeple type does not have anything unique about it unless you have the Belfair expansion. But there are a ton of cards, and you will never go through the entire deck in one playthrough. So seeing those cards and the different combinations you can have set up to score differently and build your engine differently is super interesting. And there are different combinations you put on the tree. which do offer replayability because they give you different goals to go after. But, you know, we're in that Euro world where the variance is not huge. Tapestry, on the other hand, there are so many civilizations, and those civilizations really do give me a unique, cool setup thing to do that makes it feel really different. And for me, while there's no way I've played every civilization yet, I don't even know if I've seen every civilization I have from the core box and the expansion, but I know I've never played the same civilization twice. Because if I actually changed the setup rules a little bit. I think the setup is draw 2 civs and pick 1. I typically give everyone 3 and pick 1, and if you get a repeat of one you played, you can swap it out and draw a new one. Because who wants to play a civ they've already played before? So that civ thing is so strong with Tapestry. But that's just one piece of the game. That's only sort of the starting thing. Different civs are different in very slight ways. It doesn't really change the way I play the game. My core strategy is still going to be to focus on that explore and conquer track and going back and forth between each other, sprinkling in invention and science as it suits me. And that's problematic because Everdell, for me, the strategy I'm going to play, I couldn't even tell you. It's going to be based so much on what is dealt out in the meadow, what is dealt to my hand, and then the special objectives that are put on the tree. That's going to guide my strategy. Whereas Tapestry, I'm going to play effectively the same way, with my civ giving me different bonuses and like the card play, the single card I play being the one major thing. So I'm going to call this a tie 2 because I think what this particular matchup is really going to come down to is my own personal opinion. And I think it's hard saying that I'm leaning towards replayability being Everdell, but you can't deny all the civilizations in Tapestry. So it's really a matter of preference. And we're going to have to go to overtime for this one. I think Tapestry clearly wins production. And for me, Everdell clearly wins gameplay. So then we sort of go to a tiebreaker, which I think for this one, we can sort of say what matters more, production or gameplay. And for me, gameplay matters the most. Everdell is one of the best engine building worker placement games that I've played that's in my collection. It's from a gameplay mechanic, there's so little to fault with it that, I really have to give it to Everdell. When you take into account setup times and other like small factors, these games are pretty equal. Maybe the setup time's a little faster in Everdell. Maybe the teardown's a little faster in Everdell, just because you have so many buildings to set up on your board. Personally, if each player is doing in Tapestry, it's okay, but I think Everdell has to win. In fact, the fact that Everdell has effectively launched a new core box. They have Everdell Farshore, which is a remixing of the core game. And the fact that I played that version, and the big thing that they sort of address in that is they try to address the very thing I talked to you about was one of the weaknesses of Everdell, which is getting the exact combination of critter and building with card draw can be tricky. But the solution for Farshore is that you can just break that. You just can put any critter for free in anything. Like you get 3 rule breaks effectively where you can just do the match without having the exact stuff. And for me, that takes away so much thematically of the right critter living in the right card or the right building that I actually prefer the older, less refined Everdell to Farshore. I much prefer it actually because just the theme and the mechanics and the connection feels much stronger to me. Not that Farshore doesn't have interesting little things and divergences. It's a very solid game too. But playing Farshore recently actually solidified that I preferred Everdell over a game that's effectively the improved version of it, and certainly more than Tapestry. And then, of course, when you take into account the Board Game Geek rankings, the fact that Everdell is so much higher, I am certainly not going to be one to break disagree with all those people. I think everyone is right in this case that Everdell is the stronger game between Everdell and Tapestry. Although I will say Tapestry is a very strong game, I feel it is the underrated game in Stonemeyer's collection. It used to be my favorite in Stonemeyer's collection, but I recently got Expeditions. I haven't played it as much as Tapestry, but so far I think I may prefer it a little bit. But maybe that'll show up next year. We'll find out. So that's it for our first matchup of round 2. We have Everdell going on to, the quarterfinals, whatever it is. But to round 3, it'll be facing off with one of the other winners of this round. So Everdell is going to beat Tapestry. Once again, thank you for watching Board Game Madness. As always, please like and subscribe to our videos. We're doing this, to hopefully give everyone something fun to watch, but also sort of build up our YouTube channel and our content in general. So we appreciate all the comments and subscriptions, and don't forget to do that before you sign off. You also don't want to miss, who the champion's going to be. So you're going to have to watch, for future episodes as well. So thanks again, and we'll see you tomorrow with a new video.